to learn their secrets, we too have to turn things upside down. The very first symbol I saw like this was on the cover of an album by an artist named Dio. When I was a kid, I was really into heavy metal music. I used to love Iron Maiden. I was a big fan of Dio as well. And this right here is the cover of one of his albums that I had when I was young. If you look at his name right there, Dio, all you have to do is simply turn it upside down. And here it is. So you can see on the right side, Dio has been turned upside down, and now it reads Devil. Now, as a little kid, this really blew me away. It's like, wow, look what they did. But of course I thought it was cool. It's like, wow, that's cool. They put Devil in his name. There's even the horns right there in the middle. But of course, as years have gone on and now I can understand all this a little bit better, I realize that it's not cool. But it's the truth. It's how these occultists work. This is a very simple idea. This is a very simple principle, but it's incredibly important for us to understand if we're going to learn. This is a very simple principle, but it's incredibly important, I believe, for us to understand. And certainly, in these days we're in right now, most of us can see this and understand what time it is. Most of us see this kind of thing all around us. We can't expect everyone to, because there's a lot of sleepers out there. And some of these people are never going to wake up to it. They don't want to. The modern depiction of the Baphomet appears to take its roots from several ancient sources, but primarily from the pagan gods. Baphomet bears resemblances to gods all over the globe, including Egypt, Northern Europe, and India. In fact, the mythologies of a great number of ancient civilizations include some kind of a horned deity. In Jungian theory, Baphomet is a continuation of the horned god archetype, as the concept of a deity bearing horns is universally present in individual psyches. In Christianity, we find Cernunnos, Pan, Hathor, the devil itself. So are all of these deities the same? Do all these deities and Baphomet have a common origin? It's just like when you go see a movie and there's somebody representing the devil in the movie, right? Like in a human form. Almost all the time they say, I go by many names. Someone will say, what's your name? The devil will say, I go by many names. Because it does. Because there's a fine line between calling it what it is, ultimately, keeping it simple, or getting lost in all the esoteric knowledge and all the occult knowledge on the other side. Because ultimately, all of these things, in my opinion, are representatives of the same entity, the devil itself. Baphomet's phallus is actually Hermes caduceus, a rod intertwined with two serpents. This ancient symbol has been representing Hermetism for centuries. The caduceus esoterically represents the activation of chakras from the base of the spine to the pineal gland using, you guessed it, serpentine power. Baphomet's hands form the sign of Hermetism, which is a visual representation of the Hermetic axiom as above, so below, where the microcosm, or man, is as the macrocosm, or the universe. Therefore, understanding one equals understanding the other. In the Satanic Bible, Anton LaVey describes the symbol of Baphomet. He says the symbol of Baphomet was used by the Knights Templar to represent Satan. Through the ages, the symbol has been called by many different names. Among these are the Goat of Mendes, the Goat of the Thousand Young, the Black Goat, the Judas Goat, perhaps the most appropriately the Scapegoat. Baphomet represents the powers of darkness combined with the generative fertility of the goat. In its purest form, the pentagram is shown encompassing the figure of a man in the 5 points of the star, 3 points up, 2 down, symbolizing man's spiritual nature. In Satanism, the pentagram is also used, but since Satanism represents the carnal instincts of man, or the opposite of spiritual nature, the pentagram is inverted to perfectly accommodate the head of the goat. Once again, it's turned upside down, right? Its horns representing duality, thrust upwards in defiance, the other 3 points inverted, or the Trinity denied. In 1861, the French occultist Eliphas Levi included in his book Dogmas and Rituals of High Magic a drawing that would become the most famous depiction of the Baphomet. Now I'm going to read something that he had written, and once again this goes back to the idea that the devil goes by many names. Right? So here he says, yes, in our profound conviction, the Grand Masters of the Order of the Templars worshipped the Baphomet and caused it to be worshipped by their initiates. Yes, there existed in the past, and there may still be in the present, assemblies which are presided over by this figure, seated on a throne and having a flaming torch between the horns. But the adorers of this sign do not consider, as do we, that it is a representation of the devil itself. On the contrary, for them, it is that of the god Pan, or the god of our modern schools of philosophy, or the god of Alexandrian logic, the god of the primitive Gnostic schools. So once again, I want to repeat the sentence in the middle there. But the adorers of this sign, the Baphomet, they do not consider, as do we, and he's talking about the initiates, that it is a representation of the devil. We've been conditioned for a really, really long time for all of this that's happening right now, this trans agenda. Right? You may remember this tweet right here from Obama, and this is of course in reference to now Caitlyn Jenner at the time. And this is shortly before Jenner received the Arthur Ashe Courage Award during the 2015 ESPY Awards back in July of 2015. Caitlyn's, quote, courage was deemed superior to Lauryn Hill, which was a college athlete who had played basketball despite an inoperable brain tumor and who died. I add that little bit in just so you can understand the ridiculousness of this. But more importantly, how important this agenda is to the beast system. This was Conchita Wurst, and he was the winner of Eurovision 2014. So this is just a couple of years ago. But now, looking back, you can see where it was setting the groundwork for where we are now. And the song that won the award was all about the rising of the phoenix. But in its most simplistic form, it really is just the burning away of the old and the bringing in of the new. So obviously we can see that symbolically with a trans agenda, right? Turning away from the way you were made, turning away from your creation, the way you were created, and then turning into something else, something that you decide. Here's an image of Conchita with, of course, these strategically placed antlers. And we see this kind of stuff all the time as well, right? It's always back to the horns, always goes back to the horns. In occult secret societies, the highest stage of illumination is achieved through the internalization of duality and the equilibrium between opposing forces. That's good and evil, active and passive, male and female. You could even consider this the good and evil inside each and every one of you. Which side do we choose? This concept is symbolically represented by the horned hermaphrodite god Baphomet. It's also represented in alchemical symbolism such as the alchemical androgyny. So we understand the basic symbolism, right? We understand the basic symbolism now of Baphomet. We also understand that ultimately it's a representation of the devil. So I'm just going to show you a few images. And a lot of you have seen these images already, but we can put them more into place now, right? We are constantly being conditioned with the Baphomet. It's not just about the horns either. Really, this goes back to the trans agenda that we see playing out right now. Even Bush played his part. Do you remember him reading My Pet Goat in the classroom on the day that the Twin Towers were attacked? And as I talked about earlier, these Satanists, these occultists, they turn everything upside down. So of course right there you see the picture, he's holding the book upside down. The entire classroom situation on that day was a ritual. I've covered it. Lots of other people have covered it as well. Look into it if you're not sure about this. But the teacher in this classroom actually had the kids speaking out certain words as she told a story. And it was plane, kite, must, hit, steel. S-T-E-E-L. While the Twin Towers were being hit. And if you think all of that was just a coincidence, you might as well not be watching this video. Of course, Bush made another appearance in the classroom, and that's the teacher over there to the right in I Pet Goat 2, which is an animation that, of course, is filled with occult knowledge, and it's deep. It's deep stuff. It covers a lot of things that have already happened, also covers some future events. But here you have George Bush in the animation in the classroom where he was performing the ritual on 9/11, dancing on top of the Baphomet. Sometimes it's subtle. Some of you have seen this one right here with Michelle, Michael, whatever, Obama, flashing the horns, but in a subtle way. And of course, back to the Bush family. I mean, this picture right here to me, this is years ago when I first saw this, it's astonishing. Especially when you understand these people are initiates. They understand what they're doing. They know what's going on here. Regular Joe and Joanna public got no clue when they see pictures like this. Well, that's kind of weird. Alright, what's on channel 2? But clearly you see her doing the as above so below pose. She's got the horns rolling up top, and down below she's pointing down. Laura Bush, as above so below, representing the Baphomet. And some of you may have seen this picture as well. You see George Bush on the right, trying to flash his little horns down. Once again, representing the Baphomet. You may remember this picture and this story. Oprah, of course, was pushing this one all over the place. This is a few years ago. Just showing you some examples of how they were setting the groundwork, once again, for where we are right now, which, as far as I'm concerned, is off the rails when it comes to this agenda. We're also seeing a lot of these so-called Illuminati tools being used for the agenda to keep perpetuating these ideas. And once again, I'll say, there's really, as far as I'm concerned, no need to hate these kids, some of these people that are being put in these positions. Because I firmly believe a lot of them are under intense mind control. I have no doubt many of them are being abused. I have no doubt many of them aren't in their right minds. So then, of course, Miley Cyrus is yet another one that's been pushing the idea of gender fluidity. So it's no surprise we're finding her in this position as well, pushing a lot of these themes. Here's a picture I always thought was really interesting, but when you really look at it, it's kind of crazy, kind of creepy. Miley and Justin Bieber do look a lot alike. And once again, I just think this is evidence of that trans agenda, the confusing, the blurring the lines. We really are living in a strange reality. There's so much that's happening right now that's just bizarre, right? It's not normal. One great example of that, again, is in our media. We find this in our movies and our TV shows and commercials and all kinds of things, even books. But it all seems to reflect this world around us. Sometimes we get these books, these movies, before events actually happen in the, quote, real world. But there's always these parallels. There's a brand new TV series that just came out called Outcast. While I was researching things for this video, I actually watched the first episode of this. And when I talk about how things parallel with media and, quote, real world, this is a great example. Outcast is all about demons infesting the world. Lots of demons coming in, right? More so than ever before. And there's a preacher that teams up with another guy that's actually had to fight against these things as a child. And they seem to team up, and I'm guessing the series is going to be these guys trying to fight all these demons, right? Exorcise all these demons. And just as I was watching the show, every time I looked up, there was symbolism. It was right there. Stuff that we've talked about for a long time. In fact, some of the stuff from the first episode actually applies to what we're talking about right here. And again, remember, turning everything upside down, this reminded me of this new TV series out called Preacher. And of course, right here's the picture. It's the church steeple upside down, the cross upside down. And this is the actual first image that you get for the TV show, and I believe this is the whole introduction. It'll probably be the introductory scene for the series, but of course, as you can see, we have everything turned upside down. So as I was watching this show kind of in the background, Outcast, like I said, there's a few things that stood out. Every time I looked up, it seemed like there was some kind of symbolism. I'll probably do a longer video on that show once it's had a few more episodes and stuff like that, because there's so much going on in that show itself. But this right here is a screenshot. It's something that caught my eye, and I wanted to share it with you, because we're talking about the Baphomet, right? And of course he's reading Sophia. And I wanted to share this particular screenshot with you because of what we're talking about. We're talking about the Baphomet. So Whenever I see shows like this and I see all kinds of symbols in there, those are confirmations. You know, if you just see one thing on something or whatever, you know, you never know. It could just be a part of the kind of collective consciousness, and people put these things out there. We've been inundated with all these symbols now for so long, right? But this is why you need confirmations. In a show like this, Outcast, all about demons and stuff like that, so there's no doubt it's going to have symbolism usually. And this show, like I said, just this one episode was full of it. But I thought this was interesting. So here's the guy, he's in the room and he's reading the book, Sophia. And if you didn't know, Sophia was and is still, among the pagans, one of the most worshipped goddesses. Even today there's a huge Sophia cult that exists. Her name means a lot of different things. One of the meanings is wisdom. Sophia is the Greek version of her name. Others include Hebrew, Latin, Gnostic. She's mother of all. As a biblical figure, she's been described as a co-partner of God and sometimes as the female god. Now that's more Gnostic type stuff, okay? In fact, her origins are almost impossible to trace. She can be traced back to every era, culture, and society. She's the manifestation of the divine feminine, and can be linked with practically every other goddess, including Lilith, Isis, Inanna, the list goes on, Ishtar, Sekhmet, Mot, Hera. Sophia is also known as the Grail goddess. The Grail legend can be traced back to pre-Christianity. A black goddess, Sophia, guards the Grail with the interests of the earth at heart. And most interestingly is when the Knights Templar were arrested and tortured in October of 1307, they were convicted of heresy, and one of the supposed heretical charges was worshipping the Baphomet. So there have been many different explanations as to what Baphomet is, but there's also one that relates directly to Sophia. In the 1980s, a Dead Sea Scrawler used the Atbash cipher, which has been used as far back as 500 BCE to decipher Baphomet, and what he actually deciphered, what he got, was the name Sophia. So in the Gnostic Gospels, Sophia is the creator of the world. She's also greater than Jesus in the Gnostic Gospels. And of course, the Gnostic Gospels, in my opinion, aren't to be trusted. But it's just interesting that we find the Dead Sea Scrolls, the scholar that interpreted these, and he deciphered Baphomet into Sophia. Once again, just another example of how the Baphomet really does permeate all areas of our culture. The Baphomet just being one representation of the devil itself. So we can all agree that the Baphomet is transgendered. It can't be that much of a stretch to see how that's starting to manifest more and more in our world all around us. There's so many stories now of even children coming out and being transgender, switching genders, this gender fluidity idea. But when I see these stories, instead of considering the terms they're using nowadays, gender fluidity and stuff like this, or transsexual, right, or transgender, and understanding what we do about the Baphomet, every time I see these stories, these people might as well be saying, I was born a Baphomet. At least that's how I see it. You've probably heard of Jazz Jennings. This is actually a young boy that's trying to transition into a girl, and this child has their own television series. And that was just one example. I mean, there's tons. And how many different documentaries there are, news stories, TV shows. I'm sure we'll be getting a lot more of those as well. And this is a fairly recent story about a transsexual teen, and once again this was pushing that bathroom agenda. But as I said earlier, we've been conditioned for this for a very long time, even without realizing we were being so conditioned with this idea of the Baphomet, or the transgender. Certainly Bruce Jenner has played his role in all of this. You remember now, these high-level occultists, they love their numbers, they love their dates. So Friday the 13th, May 2016, we have the Obama administration warning schools in America to allow transgender access to bathrooms. So this isn't Target, this isn't a store, nothing like this, even though those are all getting hit, obviously. This is the schools. This is for your children. Friday the 13th, the Obama administration warns the schools in America to allow transgender access to bathrooms. And speaking of Obama, we have, of course, Michelle, or some may say Michael, or Manshell, as a possibility. Here's a picture of Michelle Obama from the recent 2016 White House Correspondents' Dinner. I think it's very interesting though, but if you look at her dress and you look at the design, you can clearly see the Baphomet, right? You can see the eyes, you can see the horn, you can actually trace it out if you wanted to, but you can literally see the Baphomet right there on her dress. Most things you can't take surface value, especially in these days, as everything's being revealed. But Michelle Obama with the Baphomet dress, which of course leads back to the idea that Barack Obama himself could be the Antichrist. And he very well could be the son of perdition. He'll have to reveal himself, right, eventually. And the Bible tells us that the Antichrist, the final Antichrist, the son of perdition, will not want for a woman, will have no desire for women, so he'll be homosexual. Of course, we've seen all these stories about Obama being the first gay president, right? And you see all these things he's pushing now, specifically related to the transgenders. So again, it makes you wonder. And it's certainly something interesting to watch for. I don't know, but what do you think? Do you believe that there'll come a day where they'll actually reveal to us that Michelle Obama is in fact a man? Baal religion revolved around the cycles of nature necessary for survival and prosperity in the ancient world, primarily growing crops or raising livestock, as well as the growth of human populations. For a variety of reasons, human fertility was a really important concern. Lack of fertility in times of stress was widespread. Egyptian texts actually support this really strange phenomenon. Stress was a result of conflict and dissatisfaction between the sky gods of the cosmos. The Babylonian creation hymn, Enuma Elish, describes a great battle among the gods. However, out of this battle between the sky gods, order returned from chaos. The astral deities returned to their rightful place in the heavens and re-established the cycles of nature. In particular, the Ugarit tablets are really concerned with fertility, cast in terms of human sexuality. So worship of Baal involved imitative magic, the performance of rituals, including sacred prostitution. Sexual acts by both male and female temple prostitutes were understood to arouse Baal, who then brought rain to make Mother Earth fertile when crops were abundant. Baal was praised and thanked for his abundant rain. But for those of you who don't know, ISIS has been intentionally and symbolically destroying artifacts and historical sites that are dedicated to Nimrod. Nimrod was the first Freemason, the original builder. A lot of people believe that Nimrod was also a fallen angel. It's believed that another name for Nimrod, the world ruler and builder of the Tower of Babel, is Osiris. So most recently, ISIS had destroyed the 2,000-year-old Gate of God, which literally translates to Babel in Akkadian language. So they have also destroyed Nimrod artifacts in Nimrud, Iraq, Palmyra sites associated with Baal. According to some scholars, Baal worship was created by Nimrod himself at the Tower of Babel. So who is ISIS and why are they intentionally destroying Nimrod artifacts, sites, and entryways? Is ISIS trying to release or free her husband Osiris? As for the Arch of Triumph that was recently put up in London, it was actually built out of Egyptian marble, which is a very light shade of marble that can be tan or white. A Freemason magazine claims that the pyramids of Giza were at one point covered in white marble and were very bright when the sun hit them, almost looking as though they were illuminated in appearance. One archaeologist at the University College of London questioned why the arch was being built entirely in Egyptian marble, since this is not the material at its origin. He called this, quote, odd and very expensive. But for those of us with understanding, we don't think this is odd, right? It's not odd at all. Since the cabal that runs things, right, the secret government, the people that run everything from the shadows, let's say the Illuminati, if you want to use that term, this cabal is constructing the archway out of the very same material that once finished the pyramids of Giza. And even more interesting, as far as connections go, the arrival of the full-size replica that they put up in London coincided with an ancient pagan festival that connects the modern replicas with their ancient roots, serving false idols. That was the Beltane Festival. April 19th is not a meaningful date to most people, but to occultists and worshippers of Baal, it is a most auspicious time. Halfway between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, it marked the first day of summer in ancient times, which initiated a 13-day period known in the occult as the blood sacrifice to the beast. This period culminates in Beltane, the major festival for the worship of Baal, or as it is known in the Western world, May Day. The Temple of Baal, built 2,000 years ago to honor the god of orgies and child sacrifice, was the stage for this pagan festival in ancient times. Once again, very interesting that it lines up exactly with the day that they put the arch in London, right? Starting to see the connection there with our history. And Baal, worshipped by the Mesopotamians, was a major influence in ancient times. It was mentioned more than 90 times in the Bible, most notably when Elijah defeated the priests of Baal in a contest to bring down fire from heaven to burn a sacrifice. Baal became the archetypical form of idol worship, you could say. Followers of Baal engaged in bisexual orgies and sacrificed human infants, burning them alive. Pantheistic, they worshipped Mother Nature while denying the existence of a creator. Worshipping Baal and other idols is not especially prevalent in Western culture today. There certainly seems to be an uptick. And all those holidays still persist, taking on different meanings but retaining some of their ancient symbols and meaning. Fertility is symbolized in the westernized version of the May Day holiday by the phallic maypole ceremony. Bonfires, another prominent aspect of May Day celebrations, are reminiscent of the fires used for child sacrifices. And these occultists, these Illuminati, if you will, these Satanists that are running things behind the scenes in the shadows, have been doing these sacrifices ever since, right before our very eyes. Once again, so few people see. Remember this picture right here on the cover of Newsweek? April 19th. We know that's a special day, right? 1995, this was after the Oklahoma City bombing. But they made sure to run this picture on Newsweek of the mutilated child, the bloody child, the blood sacrifice. I thought this was interesting too. They actually ran this story on April 19th from 2011. This is from CNN. What is it about mid-April and violence in America? Now, most of the people in the higher levels of CNN totally know what this is about. I think it's interesting, of course, they put this story out on April 19th. You should check this out. People ask me sometimes what I look for when trying to see if there's some kind of a ritual or something like that taking place. And I always look at the occult holidays, I look at solstices, things like this, and I always look around April 19th and beyond. I know a lot of you do that as well. But if you weren't informed, you should check that out. When those dates roll around, there's always seems to be something out of the ordinary happening, let's just say that. Right? Typically very violent in nature. In the Bible, in Ecclesiastes, tells us that there's nothing new under the sun. And that's absolutely true. Everything works in cycles. This is why I wanted to show you about the arches and what's important about them coming up now. And the fact they wanted to put them out in the first place. So we know what the Beltane Festival is all about. We know what these arches are all about. We know what these dates are all about. And we can see how all this is lining up. At the same time, the Baphomet is being revealed, is manifesting in people, all kinds of people. These people believe they were born a Baphomet. They would never say that exactly, of course. They just feel they're in the wrong sex. But when we put all this together, we can see what this is. We can see the bigger picture. History is repeating itself right now, and we're certainly in a cycle of destruction. I don't tell you this stuff to scare you. I'm hoping to prepare you. These are very spiritual times, and these are very spiritual things, and this is actual warfare that's taking place. This is a time for your spiritual discernment, because it's all connecting, all this stuff is manifesting. And the only way to truly see it for what it is, and also to have peace with this, to not be afraid, is to have your relationship set with your Heavenly Father, to have a relationship with God. I hope that helps, and I appreciate you checking out the video. So take care out there, folks. Stay aware, and I'll talk to you real soon.